Tales from the Future, A Love That Creates Worlds. From the book by Vladimir Megre, The New Civilization, Part 1. Translated by Susan Downing. Spring was coming into bloom on planet Yalmisa. Grasses resembling earth, grasses and flowers on the trees and bushes were scenting the air. Along the path amidst the spring magnificence, Vladislav was walking to the symposium. He would be giving a lecture about the origin of life on planet Yalmisa. His childhood friend Vladimir would serve as his opponent. At the ripe age of 19, Vladislav possessed a broad enough volume of information to present his theory at any level of the academic board. But his friend Vladimir's knowledge was no less than his. Vladimir and his group of supporters would exploit any weak point in the speech or any inadequate reasoning regarding past events. Ludmila would be at the symposium too. Ludmila, it just so happened that both of them had loved this girl from the time they were children. They loved her, but they didn't admit their love, not to each other and not to the girl. Waiting instead for some kind of sign from Ludmila, which of them would she prefer? Vladislav took the long way there on purpose so he could think through his presentation one more time, but something kept him from concentrating. He had the feeling someone was watching him, and when he heard some rustling behind him, Vladislav turned around abruptly. Someone darted from the path into the bushes and froze in the grass. Vladislav took a few steps back in that direction and caught sight of his 4-year-old sister, Katya, hiding in the grass beneath the bushes. "So, Katerina, once again you're on my tail," Vladislav said, addressing his sister affectionately. "Serious business awaits me. Don't you understand that you might be disturbing me?" "Of course you understand. That's why you're hiding in the grass." "I'm not hiding. I'm just lying here. I'm taking a look at a flower and some bugs," little Katya informed him, making believe she really was interested in the little flower. "Ah, I see. Okay then. Keep lying there and looking, but I'm going on ahead." Katya immediately jumped up, ran up to Vladislav, and quickly said, "You go on ahead, Vladishik. I'll walk behind you, quiet as a mouse, so I won't disturb your thinking. When we get to where all the people have gathered, you take my hand so everyone can see what a handsome and smart brother I have." "Well, okay. Don't sweet talk me. Give me your hand. But remember, when I or someone else is giving a speech, don't even think of commenting on what the adults have said, the way you did last time." Satisfied, Katerina grabbed Vladik by the hand and promised, "Vladchik, I'll try with all my might not to comment." Elderly and young representatives of various regions of planet Yalmisa were filling up the outdoor amphitheater. No one had pens or pads or anything at all to write with. Their natural memory made it possible for them to remember all that was said, down to the tiniest details. Nor did Vladislav, who had stepped out before the audience, have any props. With the power of his mind, he could construct holograms and space that would show any pictures of the past and produce everyday items and even feelings. A bit nervous, Vladislav began his lecture. The planet on which we live is called Yalmisa. Its age is more than 90 trillion years, but life appeared on it only 300 years ago. We are obliged for the appearance of life to our ancestors, two residents of planet Earth, or, to be more precise, the appearance of life on planet Yalmisa occurred under the influence of the energy of love and the dream of two inhabitants of planet Earth. For this reason, I will present historically information about the life of the Earthlings. The initial period of life for the people of Earth might well have been the same as ours. They knew and sensed both their planet and the life's purpose of the universe well. The Earthlings ascertained the life's purpose of all living organisms of their planet and made skillful use of them. But one day, a catastrophe occurred. A virus invaded the consciousness of one of the Earth's inhabitants. A virus that began to spread aggressively among the planet's other inhabitants. Our scientists have named this virus using the word death. The outer signs of this virus, as historically data attests, consist of the following symptoms. People attacked by it began to destroy the living. Perfect diversity of the planet, constructing in its place a primitive artificial world. Earthlings themselves call this period of life the technocratic period. People attacked by the death virus began changing from rational beings into irrational beings. They flocked together in large numbers on small plots of land and built dwellings for themselves that looked like stone crypts, stacked one atop the other. Imagine a stone mountain with a multitude of hollows bored unto it. These are roughly the kind of stone mountains that people built with their own two hands and called houses. They call these hollow crypts in the artificial mountains apartments. They called a large cluster of these artificial stone mountains with the crypts adjoining each other cities. And these so-called cities, there was air that wasn't fit to breathe, and water not fit to drink, and stale food. Separate organs of the human being would begin to rot and decay. While the organism was still alive, of course, it's difficult to imagine a moving human body, inside which the organs are rotting and decaying. But that's the way it was. Historically, sources attest to the fact that people of the technocratic age even had a science called medicine. They considered the greatest achievement of this science the ability to replace internal organs. People didn't understand that the very existence of such a science indicated that the inadequacy of their consciousness. But it wasn't just people's flesh that was decaying. Their consciousness was swiftly degrading, and their intellect. Their thoughts slowed down, and they even began losing the ability to count and invent the calculator. They lost the ability to construct holograms in space and invent the television. That's a kind of primitive device that shows something resembling a hologram. Once they lost the ability to move through space, they began constructing artificial apparatus and call them automobiles. airplanes, and rockets. From time to time, various groups of people would attack others and kill each other. But the most unbelievable thing is that the death virus made people believe that they were not eternal, but only temporary in their perceived space. More and more, the acts of people in the technocratic period turned planet Earth into a foul-smelling spot in the universe, reeking of fumes. But the universal intelligence didn't destroy this noxious spot, but instead kept waiting for something. Interrupting Vladislav lectures, a voice rang out from within the group of the opponents, headed by Vladislav's friend Vladimir. Stop for a minute, please. There's no point on continuing your speech. Something like that could not have happened on Earth. All right, I'll stop my lecture if you really can prove the implausibility of what I said. A young man rose from among the group of opponents and announced the following. We have authoritative evidence that religion exists within the community of Earthlings. The religious tracts told of how the earth and everything growing on it was created by the universal intelligence. They called it God. They would worship him and perform a great number of rites in his name. I hope, esteemed lecturer, that you won't deny that fact. No, I won't, replied Vladislav. Then tell me, how can one perform rites in honor of one's God and simultaneously destroy his creations? It's impossible to do both at the same time. Consequently, thickly settled cities could have existed on Earth. People could not have polluted the water created by the God they revered. And besides, the universal intelligence could not have allowed that kind of bachana. Otherwise, we can't even call it intelligence. Quite the opposite. We'd have to call into question the intelligence of what has been created by it. Of man, first of all. What do you have to say to that, esteemed lecturer? I'll say that the existence of intelligence, especially universal intelligence, is the unity of two great sources, intelligence and anti-intelligence. The anti-intelligent period of life for the people of planet Earth was necessary. And if you'll permit me, in my subsequent remarks, I'll prove that two great sources exist in man. All right, continue. The young man assented and then took his seat. The universal world is a union of opposites. Vladislav continued confidently. And man also reflects this union of opposites in himself. Within the unbelievable chaos that befell the people of Earth, there suddenly arose people who were able to understand. These people changed their relationship to earthly creations, not in words and not with the help of religious treaties. They began changing their way of life. They themselves didn't yet fully comprehend the scale of their creation, and they called their actions simply building a family homestead. They didn't yet know that by touching the earth with a new awareness, they were beginning to revive the planets of the universe. That dealt would not exist for them. That their descendants would call the children they bore gods. They were simply building their family homesteads on the planet Earth. The universal intelligence followed their action and bated breath and wonder. And there came a time when all the people of the earth began to live on their beautiful homesteads. And there came a day when, look, I'll show you a hologram. You'll see two people in it. And the space in front of the audience arose an earth landscape. Two elderly people, a man and a woman, were walking hand in hand along a path that led from their homestead to the forest. They were clearly more than 100 years old. Evening was falling, and stars, as yet barely visible, were appearing in the sky. The people walked up to a cedar tree, and the elderly woman leaned her back against it. I'm a grandmother and a great-grandmother, and you still keep asking me to walk beneath the starry sky, just like when we were young, the woman said tenderly, addressing her companion. But don't you want to do that too? Of course I do, my love. He took hold of her shoulders, embraced her impulsively, and kissed her on the lips. Then, pulling the shoulder strap of her dress to the side, he revealed her shoulder, and the moonlight, three moles, all in a row, were clearly visible on the woman's left shoulder. The man kissed each one of them. You're just the same as you were, my love, and I don't want to part from you. And we won't part. We'll die and be born anew. We can't be reborn, she said sadly. Look, there's still less and less open land on earth, all the time. There are gardens and homesteads all around, and there may not be enough room for our grandchildren. Most likely the Creator miscalculated somehow when he was creating our earth. I don't think so. There's some way out. We just don't know what it is yet. But I'm certain that our love cannot be severed. You and I will die so that we can be born anew. But where? Look, my love, on that star, may our thought create life that resembles life here on earth, on a new planet. Think about it. Why did it occur to him to create so many planets? It wasn't for no reason. Our thought is material, and it will create for us life on a lifeless planet. We will materialize again and again, our love. Thank you for the beautiful dream, my love. With you, I will help you give birth to life on the new planet. My love, what shall we call the planet of our new life? Yalmeza. Let that be called that, Yalmeza. Wait for us, and while you're waiting, burst into bloom with gardens. Cover yourself with grasses, just as I wish. The man pronounced confidently and passionately. And as I too wish, she answered. The hologram disappeared. Vladislav bowed to the audience and stepped off to the side, ceding his spot to his friend and opponent Vladimir. Vladimir took Vladislav's spot, cast a glance over the audience, and began to speak. I must oppose my friend, and I'll say straight away, there is much in his theory that's unproven and even contradictory. Like my friends, I can't believe that this absolutely absurd period in the life of people existed. The hologram he showed, as we all understand, is the will of his thought, of his imagination, and it demands confirmation. Although this hologram did produce some kind of strange sensation in me, it seemed to me that my friend took it from among stories we already know, only I can't recall what its source is. A murmur passed through the amphitheater and exclamations were heard. Could he really have plagiarized it? Unheard of, but perhaps the lecturer didn't know. Plagiarism, I definitely had the feeling it was something I'd seen before. Vladislav lowered his head and stood off to the side. He winced when he heard a child cry from the far rows of the seated people. Ah, it was his irrepressible sister, Ekaterina, shouting. It's good that she's just shouting and not commenting on what's going on, thought Vladislav. But he was mistakenly waiting until silence had fallen. Ekaterina loudly announced, "Don't even dare to argue with my brother, because he's very smart and sensitive." Yes, that's a weighty argument. Range out some Snickers. That's correct. Very weighty. Continued little Ekaterina. And you, Vladimir Megre, stop staring at Ludmila. Don't stare, and that's it. Katya, be quiet, shouted Vladislav. I won't be quiet. Ludmila loves you, and you love her. I know for sure. Katya, Vladislav shouted once more and then headed toward his sister. Ludmila, why are you just sitting there? Exclaimed Katya. Stop him. He won't let me have my say. He's going to drag me away now by force. A brown-haired girl stood up from the farthest row, went toward Vladislav, and barred his path. Ludmila's cheeks were burning red. Lowering her head, she whispered, Your sister is right, Vladislav. The hushed audience heard her whisper. The heads of those in attendance turned to little Ekaterina, and people smiled at her and applauded. Inspired by the audience support, the little girl ran to Vladimir, who stood before the hall, took her spot beside him, and held her little hands aloft, quieting the hall with her gesture. When everyone had fallen silent, she began speaking once again, addressing Vladimir. And you, Vladimir Megre, you were just about to become a traitor. Don't criticize my brother. He showed everything correctly. He's your friend. You're his friend, and don't criticize him. Vladimir condescendingly looked down at the little girl from above and addressing both her and those sitting in the amphitheater. Just as condescending, he said, I'm not criticizing, I'm simply stating a fact. There's not enough proof for the hologram he showed. There's not a single bit of proof. There is one or even two, Katerina announced firmly. And where might it be? Or they, if there are two? One of them, that's me. The second, that's you, Vladimir. The little girl said confidently. At these words, she undid two little buttons in her little dress and revealed her little shoulder. On little Ekaterina's left shoulder, Vladimir glimpsed 3 moles that were just like the ones the elderly earth woman shown in the hologram had. Vladimir took a close look at the moles on shoulder of the little girl, and the blood began pulsing more and more strongly in his veins. He made an effort to remember. Before him appeared a hologram that he alone could see. An earth landscape, he kisses the 3 moles on the shoulder of his beloved. Then she embraces him. Laughing, she tosses his hair, as always, kisses the tip of his nose, laughing. The hologram disappeared. Vladimir looked a bit longer at Kathryne, who was standing before him, her shoulders still bare. Then he quickly leaned over, picked the little girl up in his arms, and pressed her to him. She embraced him and, laughing, tousled his hair and quickly kissing the tip of his nose. He held little Kathryne in his arms, and she whispered in his ears, "You were in too much of a hurry, Vladimir, or maybe I was born a bit too late. Now wait until I grow up. Wait for 14 years. You won't be happy with any other girls. I'm your other half." "I'll wait for you to grow up, my love," the young man quietly answered, worn out from the excitement and calm now. Kathryne rested her head on Vladimir's shoulder and fell into a sweet sleep. But he silently stood before the hushed audience and carefully had his future wife in his arms. He was mentally writing letters in space. Those gathered there read the text of the hologram he created. Proof exists. It is within each of us. Endless and eternal is love in the universe. Then slowly and gently, so as to not awaken the little girl asleep on his shoulder, Vladimir made his way toward the exit. He forgot to disconnect his thought from space, and the hologram continued to fill up with letters. Those gathered there understood that these words weren't addressed to them, but they couldn't help reading them. You ran barefoot amongst the stars. You didn't seek love for yourself. You on your own, in the expanses of the universe. You preserve what we must preserve together. Words intended for the little girl of the planet Yelmisa and the Earth woman, the goddess who had given life to their planet. The little goddess slept sweetly on Vladimir's shoulder, and perhaps in her sleep she also heard the words of her beloved.